Hello everyone, I'm Carmine Demaro, and today is our first installment of our series Coffee Dates with Local Entrepreneurs, brought to you by Venture for America at VCU. Today we start off with Matt Rutherford, Professor of Entrepreneurship here at VCU, to talk about bootstrapping. Matt, it's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thanks, Carmine. Glad to be here.
So we'll start off with, what is bootstrapping? Could you give us a rundown of your definition?
Yeah, bootstrapping is really two things. First, it's the idea that you're going to start an organization, a new venture, with no outside resources. So, were I to start a company, I would do it with just the things that I have, either my network, my savings, a mortgage on my house, whatever. I would not take any debt or equity from any outside parties. Now, people will differ on their definition. I would tell you friends and family are your immediate contacts network, and does not constitute bootstrapping. So that's the first thing. The second thing is then the creative activities that you have to engage in to operate without these resources. So it's really two things that we call bootstrapping. One is the decision to eschew external finance, and the second is the creative actions that you take to operate in that state.
Okay. So would you say that that's advisable to try to practice bootstrapping to begin with?
Yeah, on average, no. I mean, the research is clear that organizations with more resources that start up do better, which is fairly obvious. But it is the case that most new ventures will find themselves bootstrapping to one degree or another. There's just not, whether they can't raise the money or the money is not available, most new ventures don't have what they need, and they have to bootstrap. And to be clear, some bootstrapping is just good business. I want to be careful with my resources. I don't want to spend all the money that I have at one time. I want to hold on to as much as I can, and that's just sort of prudent. But taken to the extreme, where I have no access to outside funding, that's bootstrapping.
Okay.
So on average, no.
But sometimes a necessary thing that you have to do.
Virtually always necessary to some degree. Very few entrepreneurs find themselves in a condition where they have all the money, all the resources that they need.
Wouldn't that be great?
When they hang their shingle. Yeah.
Okay, so you've been forced to bootstrap, you can't find the resources, you can't find the funding. How do you get yourself from bootstrapping to the next level?
Yeah, that's a challenging one. So there are ways, and so ultimately it comes down to think about, I need to save money, and this is tricky. I need to save money while also making money. Right? Now, if we could all do that all the time, we'd be doing that in our personal lives and everything else. But there are ways to do it. And one simple example is, and you see this a lot now, is entrepreneurs that share resources. So whether I go into an incubator, maybe I find a way to sort of share employees with another company, another startup, and then we split the cost on those things. Or I go into an accelerator or whatever. Those things can work, because what you're doing then is obviously you're containing costs, because we're splitting the cost for the employees, I'm splitting the cost for my space if I'm in an incubator. Maybe I'm paying nothing for the incubator. And for locations like we have in Richmond, I'm also gaining access to a lot of great social capital. So I'm meeting important people, I'm meeting the people that run the accelerator, the incubator, obviously. I'm also meeting the people that are in the accelerator. I'm meeting their contacts when their customers, their clients come around. So I'm building my social capital. I'm also saving money. And that's really, really, really what you want to do. So you have to be very careful when you prioritize your activities, right? Because you don't have enough money, but the other thing you don't have enough of is time. So you can't do everything all the time.
Right.
So as an entrepreneur, it's worth spending a little bit of your brain power and saying, okay, what things am I going to do? What things am I not going to do once I get started? And some of these things need to be done, frankly, in pre-startup, in what we call nascence, because you're not going to have time to make these decisions, all these decisions on the fly once you get started. Time and money are of the essence, obviously. So decisions early on to say, I'm going to do these activities, this group of activities. I'm not going to do these group of activities.
Sure.
So you know when they present themselves to you as an entrepreneur, you say, okay, this is one I said back there I was going to do, and I'm going to do that. And those activities really need to consist of things that not only constrain or contain, your resources, but they build your resource base as well. And there aren't many of those activities that are out there, but take a little time to identify them in nascence, and you'll make better decisions post-startup.
Of course. So part of bootstrapping, it sounds like, is just being efficient with your resources. Is it fair to say that even post-money, after raising money, you would want to continue some of these practices of bootstrapping?
Yeah, that is very fair to say, and I think your investors want that. Your bankers, your equity players, whoever they are, they don't want you wasting the money. And there's one thing that you'll hear sometimes is that you should bootstrap because people that get money from outside sources, venture capitalists or angels, whatever, entrepreneurs tend to waste money. They just blow through it when they have it. They blow through it. And to me, that position's a little hard to defend because, I mean, I don't know about you, but any equity players I know don't appreciate that. It's their money. They put it in. They have skin in the game. They want you to be responsible with that money. So I don't think it's the case that you are more likely to blow through money after you receive external finance and be less frugal with it. So, but yeah, just being efficient is just good business,
Sure.
right? You want to do that whether you're Google or whether you're Carmine tomorrow.
Sure. So for our viewers who are starting businesses, they may be small scale, they may be looking to grow quickly. What are some of the most pertinent tactics that you can use to bootstrap in the earliest stages?
Well, so the first thing you want to do is collect your money, right? Get your receivables in the door because, and it seems obvious, but just because you sold something doesn't mean you have cash on hand. And really all that matters at that stage of the game is cash. Revenue, while clearly important, you need to be selling products. It doesn't matter if you don't get cash in your hand. So make sure whatever you do, you collect your receivables. And ideally you wouldn't have any receivables. You'd even a cash only business, but that's not all that likely. So that's the first thing you want to do, collect your receivables. The other thing you want to do is while you're hanging on to your cash, and we call this slowing down the cash cycle. And again, it's fairly obvious. But you hang on to your cash, and you also, when you can, you let go of your cash very slowly. So if there are bills that can be paid later, much later, then pay them much later.
As late as you can.
That's right. So get money in the door very quickly, get money out of the door very slowly, and obviously that's not a strategy for the long run.
Sure.
If you can get some traction with that strategy, it can.
So that can probably lead to some stress on the relationships with your suppliers, I imagine.
It can. So obviously you need to decide who is going to put up with it and who isn't.
Right.
And the ones that aren't, you be very careful with that relationship. But at the same time, you're in a tough situation as an entrepreneur. So, you know, if paying the supplier means you're going out of business, I would tell you to not pay that supplier
Sure.
for a little while. Get them on the horn and say, look, here's where I am. I can't do this. If I go out of business, you don't get paid. I don't get paid. So that's certainly one tactic you can use. Again, the one that works is in the literature we call it joint utilization, but it's sharing. So as much as you can early on, try to get in relationships with people that are going to be your suppliers. Try to get trade credit. I mean, that's just a secret. It's not a secret at all. You should just try to do it. So trade credit essentially is I can buy something now from a supplier and pay them later. Cool. Maybe they'll charge you juice. Maybe they won't. But even if they do, that's still something you want. So trade credit, very valuable. Try to negotiate those terms again as early as possible. But those are ways that I can use my relationships, again, sharing employees, sharing contacts, and just gaining information by people that I've met or know. Again, we call that social capital. But so essentially what you're doing is you're not going to survive because you have a lack of financial capital. You will survive if you can use your social capital and your human capital, which is you, your entrepreneur, and your team. Right? So we essentially have three types of capital. I digress a little bit. But you want to use the two types, social and human, which you hopefully do have, and we're able to nurture in pre-startup. Use those two types to gain financial capital. So you are not going to succeed, clearly, I hope it's clear, by having a lack of financial capital. You may succeed by using your social and human to gain financial. And I would tell you that's what the best entrepreneurs do. Right. Regardless of what they have financially, they're able to get around any hurdles because they do develop human and social. And frankly, the human capital is, they're bright, motivated, passionate entrepreneurs.
Sure. So Matt, you've got a new book coming out in January 21st, Strategic Bootstrapping. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what your motivation was for writing it?
Yeah, I just told you the whole book, so okay. You know you don't need to go out and buy it. You're welcome. So the motivation was was the bootstrappers, which we all love, right? It's
a great story.
It is a cowboy metaphor, and I'm an entrepreneur, and I feel like a cowboy. It's me against the world. It's very American too. I mean, Americans sort of like that visualization, and I'm with it. The problem in the popular press is that those stories of people that have made it as bootstrappers are celebrated, and frankly, they should be. If you can do that as a bootstrapper and make it, you are a phenomenal individual. And you should be celebrated. You should be on the cover of Inc. and everyone should want your autograph, and I hope that continues to happen. The problem is, since we celebrate the outliers, right? Those people are not the average. Those men and women are not. They're outliers. On average, they fail. Bootstrappers fail. And so, as a student of mine, or just someone in the world that wants to be an entrepreneur, and I read the popular press, I say, oh man, bootstrapping. That's the way to go. Look at these guys; they're all making it. And I want to tell the far less boring story, right, that will never get published in the popular press because no one wants to read it. No one wants to read, hey, this isn't the best way to do it. You got to do some of these things. So that is what my book is about. Is essentially say, all right, bootstrapping has some positives. On average, it has a lot of negatives. Be very careful.
Sure.
Be very careful before you say, I don't need outside money. Be very careful.
It's obviously a very popular opinion among entrepreneurs.
It is because we want to be, and I say we as an entrepreneur, but we say entrepreneurs want to be self-sufficient. And we know that a key characteristic of entrepreneurs is they're autonomous. Essentially, I don't want to work for someone else. That's why I become an entrepreneur. And so that's good to themselves. And so some of those negatives are, I'm overconfident about what I can do without resources. And I'm so eager to be without a boss that even if someone says, no, you can't have money, I don't think your idea is very good, you'll say, well, I'm going to do it anyway. So I want the typical person to just be aware of these things.
Sure.
And to say, on average, you will have these biases, you will have these thoughts, and that's fine, that's good. But one of the things you need to do quickly is get either an advisory board or someone in your life who's important to you that is able to sit down with you and say, you're seeing this wrong. You're a confident, autonomous individual, but this is going to be rough going. And then hopefully you'll listen to that person. No matter what you do in pre-startup, you're probably going to be stuck bootstrapping. So here are some things you can do, and that is the tone of the book.
So some ways so that they can apply it to their businesses
Yep.
going forward. Great.
It's also a little bit of a primer where it gets really boring. A little bit of primer on finance theory.
Okay.
And so before I lose you on finance theory,
Everyone's favorite part.
right? But when you as undergrads, you take a finance class and it's corporate finance. We have a class obviously at VCU that tries to shore that up, and it's an entrepreneurial finance course. But most of the theories that researchers have come up with are based on a very well-known theory that some guys won the Nobel Peace Prize for back in, I should know this, but I don't, I'm going to say 1958, at the University of Chicago. And it's a great theory, but it's made for public firms and doesn't always apply to the life of the new venture. So what as entrepreneurship scholars we've begun to do is try to develop and grow finance theory for the new and small enterprise. And so in that book, I talk a little bit about the cutting edge research and theory building on that topic,
Great.
Which I think is important.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Matt. I think that's it for our time today. Thank you to our viewers tuning in. Please come back next Monday for our next installment of Coffee Dates with Local Entrepreneurs, brought to you by Venture for America at VCU. Thank you.